I wanted to come up here as our head of research and give our Skift Research Outlook for 2025. So I think the question on the research team's mind was, look, if 2023 was the year of revenge travel and 2024 was normalization, what should we expect in 2025? And just to give you guys the bottom line up front, just to cut to the chase, we think slow and steady growth amid new challenges and opportunities. Every year we do these sector-wise revenue growth estimates, and you can see there's a range of numbers, somewhere between 4 to 9%, depending on the different sectors. But overall, these are very good growth rates. Remember, like the baseline for growth in the world is like 3%. So travel growing faster than the rest of the world. Lots of new things happening. We've talked about the trends. We've talked about AI. We've talked about social media, but also plenty of opportunities. I think it's worth remembering, too, that 2024 was really only the first year where we saw true growth above and beyond 2019 levels. So all of these industries are still going to reach record high levels of revenue in 2025. So I'm up here to talk about our outlook. You're at the Megatrends event. How do these two things kind of work together? I think my analogy, it's peanut butter and jelly. They go together really great. The point of our Skift Research Outlook is to put a quantitative overlay on top of the big themes, ideas, and trends that are in the Megatrends presentation. Sarah was up here earlier this afternoon. She went through many of the trends, and she kind of grouped them to these 4 buckets, right? Consumer, products and services, government, and tech. What I want to do with the next 8 or 9 minutes I've got up here, because I've already given you the numbers, is to really go through and put some numbers and some data behind where we see these trends. And I'm going to really focus on these 2 I've highlighted, consumer and tech. I think that's what Skift does really, really well. So let's start with the consumer. If you've looked at our Skift Research Outlook before, you've seen that sector chart before. That's something that we do every year. This year, we did something new that I'm really quite excited about, and we did a consumer survey. We went out to 1,600 consumers in 5 major travel countries, US, UK, Germany, China, and India, and we asked them about how they intend to travel next year, what they want to do differently, and of course, most importantly, how much more or less do they want to spend. Good news is they want to spend more, not less. You can see there's a wide range of numbers here, but we saw anywhere from between 7 to 14% revenue growth from the consumer side. So again, think about that sector slide I showed. Look at the consumer slide. We really are triangulating on that high single-digit, 7 to 10% range. It's going to vary by sector. It's going to vary by region, but overall, a good growth number. We're definitely not in the revenge travel era of 20, 30% growth anymore, but I do think in many ways the spirit of revenge travel lives on. This was a fun question that we did. We asked consumers, which of these discretionary purchases are you most excited to spend on, right? No one's excited to pay the rent. No one's excited to put gas in their car. But people are excited to spend money on travel. And you can see, by the way, as a researcher, look, travel's the #1 spot. I did not plan that. I didn't make that happen. I said, maybe in my wildest dreams, when we put the survey together, we'd get a result like this. People are incredibly excited across the world, North America, Europe, Asia. Travel is the discretionary expense they're most excited about. Now, that doesn't mean that the economic conditions don't matter, right? If people can't buy all those boring things like groceries and rent and all that stuff, then they can travel. But if they have discretionary spend, travel is what they want to prioritize. And again, I said this is both a quantitative and a qualitative survey. This is one of our more qualitative questions, but I thought it would be of interest to people in this room. 2025 will be a year of fill in the blank. What are your travel goals? Explore new destinations and family and groups. So I think people really want to travel in order to see new places and to connect with those people most important to them, their friends, their families, loved ones. That's on the consumer side of things. Let's switch and let's talk a little bit about the tech megatrends. And here's where I'm going to start to bring in some of our megatrends and share a little more data. I put this slide in there. I was a little worried about putting this slide in there. It's a bit of a confusing chart, so I apologize, but bear with me. This is from our hotel distribution report. We surveyed hoteliers, and we said, how do you think that you get bookings today, and how do you think you'll get bookings in the future? And I put this up here because tech disruption is important. It's kind of stirring the pot. It's shaking things up. And even though this is a complicated chart, it shows you the main channels for hotels. And I know not everyone here is a hotelier, but you've got the non-digital direct, the offline. You've got the digital stuff, which is all technology-enabled, and you've got the third parties and the intermediaries. Hoteliers tell us that they expect in the next 5 years, by 2030, that digital direct could be the largest channel. Not everyone agrees with this. We got some controversy on this one. But the point is that the fact is that new changes in tech and distribution are enabling that this is even potential. And it's also changing the dynamics between how online travel agencies, other intermediaries, and digital direct channels all sell travel. And this applies not just for hotels, but for airlines, for cruise, for experiences, for destinations. The point is, and as you've heard across these talks today, and you'll hear more about, there are new entrants into the space and shifting gatekeepers. We've talked a lot about this social media trend. Richard from Muse was just talking about this one, the last question before I came on stage. This social media trend is a big one. I mean, just to double click on this, so to speak, it's not about influencers. Influencers is not a new trend. That's an old one, right? That's 10, maybe even 20 years old. It's about creators and social media becoming a new part of the distribution channel mix. We showed that earlier chart about how distribution channels are shifting. They're integrating themselves into e-commerce. And again, adding that qualitative overlay, you can see some data. We asked American travelers, how comfortable are you booking directly through a social media site? 2/3 told us that they would be somewhat or even very comfortable. So we're starting to see that push from social media from just the top of the funnel into actual transactional. And we're seeing many other types of new competitors enter the field. We're going to have Jen from Capital One on right after. Capital One is a huge seller of travel. They sell a lot of travel, as are some of their competitors, like Chase, like American Express. We obviously love Capital One, but there's other credit card companies out there. They have almost 1/3 of the US population has a Capital One card. That number, she can update that number if it's right or not. But there's a huge amount of people who have these cards. Some of these card holders, card membership bases, compete with major loyalty programs like Marriott and even like Expedia One Key. So we're seeing, because people love travel, we're seeing new competitors come into the space, and we're seeing a lot of fragmentation as a result. Sometimes it's worth saying, we're talking about incumbents, sometimes selling pickaxes is just the best way to do it too, right? Like in the gold mine, it was the jeans and the pickaxes that made the most money, and we've seen some large travel players like Expedia really pivot to B2B and try to enable this new ecosystem of social media, new competitors, credit cards, all those sort of players. And of course, there's a big disruption coming in the world of AI. We were talking with Steve about this. Google is the 500-pound gorilla in the room. It is arguably the most powerful company in tech, maybe the most powerful company in the world. We are all downstream of Google, and Google's business is to sell keywords. And there may be a world where we're moving from keyword search to conversational search. There's going to be really big changes, and that's going to affect all of us in both our daily lives and in our professional lives. By the way, it doesn't mean Google is disappearing. It just means it's changing. And again, in our Outlook survey, we asked, in this coming year, in 2025, are you going to use AI to plan trips? Do you think you're likely or somewhat likely? Almost 1/3 of Americans said that they were likely in some way, shape, or form to use AI to plan their trips in 2025. That's a huge amount of people. If it's 1/3 of Americans, it's almost 100 million people. Of course, that pales in comparison to nearly 80% of Chinese and Indian travelers who said that they were interested and likely to use social media. So that's another thing that's happening this year as well. Huge regional differences. The region matters, right? There's not just economic differences from North America to Asia. There's cultural differences. There's tech differences. There's different platforms in use. There's lots of interesting things happening that are going to shake up the travel industry in 2025. But just because there's a lot of change, don't expect the incumbent players to give up without a fight either. I use this chart from Booking Holdings as an example from one of their most recent quarterly earnings reports, where they looked at year-on-year growth of their different segments, each individual vertical that they sell, and then their connected transactions, their connected vertical, which is one traveler booking more than one vertical. And I think sometimes, from where we sit at Skift, media, business intelligence, we've been hearing about the connected trip for a while, and you start to get maybe a little skeptical, but there is proof here that it's starting to grow, it's starting to gain traction. Booking.com has invested a lot of time and money into this technology, and at least they would like us to think, or there's early evidence that it is showing some growth. So don't expect these big tech companies like Booking, or even big suppliers like Marriott, like Delta, to give up without a fight. Some technologies totally disrupt the incumbents and are anti-incumbent, but some technologies can be pro-incumbent. And actually, you can see that the big companies and the big players are maybe the ones who can take the best advantage of the technology. So I think that is still yet to be determined. We're going to see how a lot of people adapt to these changes, but certainly there are some very well-financed companies with a lot of means to do so. So that's kind of, I'll wrap it up there. I just want to give you a quick recap of the things that we talked about in our outlook. We expect high single-digit revenue growth. That's that 7 to 10% range. That's our forecast for the travel industry. Again, I always think of like high tech or crypto or whatever, and you're seeing these 10,000, 50% returns. This is a good number. Like global GDP is growing 3%. We're growing 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the world economy. We're still a high growth sector. Travel is the purchase that consumers are most excited about. That's a really important moat for us as an industry. Nonetheless, expect some geographical divergences. There's different economies, different tech platforms, different rules and regulations in different regions. I think regional approach probably beats a one-size-fits-all approach. Because consumers love travel, everyone wants to sell travel. That's both an opportunity and a challenge for all of us in the room to address in 2025. And finally, tech is rapidly changing in the travel industry. We've got social media, you've got AI, you've got all these conversations that are happening here at the Megatrends today. You've got pet travel, all these great megatrends that are transforming the world of travel. I think we're going to see more competition, and hopefully that will lead to better things for our industry and for the traveler, better customer service, more differentiation, more innovation. So I'm really excited about what's going to come in 2025. A lot of this is based on our global travel outlook. If you are a Skift Research subscriber, thank you. You have access to this report. And if you're not a subscriber, consider becoming one, or you can scan this code to get the report, or come up to me after. Thanks so much for having me, and enjoy the rest of the day.